All right, here we are, Lakes. You see TSM this weekend?
I did. It was actually really good. I was excited about watching the evolution of like a pick and ban phase. They adapted very well over IM. It was actually a lot of fun to watch.
But North America is the first time a North American team has won on an international stage. I thought it was pretty good.
Didn't you think it was going to be like C9 or something? Like, to me, I thought that was going to be one of the teams to make it.
TSM's the best team in the world. They just proved it.
Absolutely. TSM better than Korea and EU, right?
Best team in China. There it is.
Apparently.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm Draegan. With me is Valor and Lakes. This is Crowns and Crows, your Crowfall podcast. Let's get down to the rundown. All right. For Kickstarter stats, we since last week we have 1,217 backers with a total of 12,700 total. The game has made $124,000 since last week, $1.2 million total. And now, according to Todd, in the little release that we had today, is the 20th largest video game kickstart of all time, which is pretty good. And Valor saw Gordon Walton as XXSW. See, I didn't screw that up. And topics for today, we're going to see how many initial rushes can a campaign have, mounts and metas, how they work, and are you disciplined with your disciples, or disciplines? Man, I read that wrong. I screwed it up already. All right, well, let's start right now. Valor, you did see Gordon at SXSW, and you told me right before the show started he had some really awesome things to say about kickstarting. Why don't you fill us in?
Yeah, it was actually a pretty fun venture. I got to go down. I didn't even realize there was a gaming convention going on, and sure enough, Gordon was there talking at it. So I got to sit down and listen to him speak on some of the strategies of launching a Kickstarter and answering some questions from the community about how do you do certain things. And one of the questions that I asked when presented the opportunity is how do you manage the expectations of the community, and they're your support, they're funding your game now. How do you manage what they want with what your vision is?
I know how you manage it. You start a Kickstarter on a Tuesday, right?
The funny thing about that, Kickstarters on Tuesdays apparently statistically are more successful. So, people just have to pay attention to those sorts of things. It's getting outside of all the weekend news and drama that takes place. Kim Kardashian showing her butt somewhere, I'm sure. But, that was a fun little thing. I'll actually link. I was able to track down the Twitch page for South by Southwest Gaming, and I'll link that in the chat while you continue forward.
All right. Well, we get that in the chat. I mean, a Kickstarter is a very delicate thing. You could really screw a Kickstarter up, as we've seen in some MMOs before. But I think they really did a pretty good job. And some people I've seen around the net that's saying we've hit a kind of a slow point right now, and they're saying, "Oh, the game's not being supported." Well, first of all, they've blown the dollar amount out of the water, and most Kickstarters kind of hit a lull point in the middle and then kind of pick up towards the end. That's kind of like the standard trend. Lakes, are you worried that we're not going to see that many more stretch goals? Do you like the ones that we have right now? What do you think about the new one that came out today?
So overall, just talking about the Kickstarter and how people are talking about how it slows down just a little bit, realistically, that's how Kickstarters go, right? So there's always the initial rush, then you have that lull in the middle, and then at the back end of that Kickstarter is when you kind of get that re-rush, right? So that's kind of what we're hoping for. But as far as the progress of the Kickstarter, one of the cool things that they've done is they've been very transparent about a lot of things that they want to come out with. So overall, they're producing the content, they're hitting all the key points, and I think the new one that they talked about after the mounts was trying to build a little bit more on God's Reach. I think that's almost what people wanted. The people wanted the rule sets to come out a little more, and
well, I mean, it
seemed like they community feedback for that.
One of the misconceptions about the Kickstarter that we see, I mean, they talk about all the different things about how we had different campaigns, different rule sets, and they're not releasing that initially. It's just basically going to be the dregs and the Eternal Kingdoms. And what are we seeing right now with people's expectations? Did they expect too much and then disappointed? Have you seen anything out there in the community as far as how that's working out?
What I've seen is that I've seen concern. People are concerned that the the stretch goals are too big. I've seen a lot of complaints about it being 300,000 as opposed to smaller goals with smaller, more specified rewards. But one of the things that I'm going to go back and reference that I didn't mention earlier is that what they talked about at the convention was Kickstarters tend to see a bell curve, well, a reverse bell curve of there's a lot of interest right at the beginning of the Kickstarter, and then it hits this lull, and then it goes right back up near the end. Everyone's wanting to get in there, all wanting to get those rewards, or people are just talking about it more, whatever it might be. And so even though we're seeing that it's kind of slowly creeping along right now, statistically people expect that there's going to be a big surge at the end. So I don't think it's unreasonable for us to be able to hit 1.2 million or 1.3 million.
Do you think that if we hit $3 million, we can get Natalie to personally sign everybody's collector edition? Do you think that's a good stretch goal? 3 million.
That would be. I mean, if we can double sales.
There we go.
There we go. We came up with the goal. Gordon's that means watching if it happens, right now. Because of us.
He just personally messaged me. He said it's gonna happen. So you heard it here first. It's exclusive. By the way, Lakes, how come you didn't tell me my graphic wasn't working? I spent all weekend making the background and it wasn't playing. Are you not paying attention?
No.
Are you not paying attention?
I try to log into Twitch to update our titles, so that's a little slow. But
for God's sakes.
Yeah, we're here. We're moving.
Let's get the show going. Okay, let's talk about a first topic. And we mentioned that it was going to be about the initial rush. And when we were doing some pre-game meetings, we were talking about, the whole design concept about the campaigns. There's always going to be that initial rush, new map, brand new players, starting with little to no gear, depending on the campaign, and it's the rush of exploration. It's the whole civilization start. But players as the game gets older and older, you're going to see more baggage brought in with the players, depending on the campaign. Even if it's not gear or materials, it's still skills. They're still going to have the disciplines. They're going to still have the different archetypes and the more developed classes. So we see now what I think is going to be interesting when the game finally launches. We're going to see that initial freshness where everybody's got 0 skill points and what have you. Do you think that's going to be ultimately more fun and that's going to replace the new game feeling, or do you think that's just going to be fun for a while but no one's going to care about it? Blake, I know you had some things to say. What do you think about that?
I think that what's going to happen is it's always fun. You're going to rush in there. Everyone's starting out at ground zero. It's almost like playing a survival game, and no one has anything, and the first thing you could do is make a bow and arrow, and it's a lot of fun. You're fighting another person with a rock or something.
Well, I mean, that could be any campaign, though.
Right, exactly. It depends on the rule sets of what you can bring in and stuff. But across the board, that's fun. What I think that they're bringing to this game is a way to have that feel fresh again.
Well, I mean, we know that, but like, what about the first campaign ever? Everybody's got no skills. Everybody's got kick and punch and maybe a couple sticks and a couple rocks, and that's it. That initial rush where everybody's a newbie for the first time, that's always going to happen only once, and that's at the game launch. Now, do you think that's going to be something that people are always going to chase and get nostalgic about and wish they could go back to? Or do you think they can make a campaign that's newbies only or skill capped only? What do you? I mean, do you think they're going to go that direction?
It depends on the person's play style. So across the board, some people personally like that progression that persists on. So they like the character progression that they talked about of it being permanent and bringing it back in. Because some people may not like to start from ground zero.
Sure.
And there are some people like us. I mean, we all talked about it. We watch League of Legends. We play League of Legends. We play MOBAs. It's always that fresh start from the beginning. And it is an MMO. They have to have an MMO first. I think people are going to wish or not want per se to have that level 1 rush where everyone's clear off the board, but some people are going to want to persistently go in and play those campaigns where there may be no import rules, where you're starting off from ground zero. The only advantage you have is that character progression, and that's the closest you're going to get to it. I don't know what they can do to kind of appease those kind of people that really want to start from ground zero of everybody having a stick and a rock and one arm punches.
Well, one thing. Sorry to interrupt, but one of the things that I've seen is when you go into games such as some of these first-person shooter survival games, which Crowfall even mentioned that there are going to be some survival elements. People they enjoy that initial rush, but at the same time, how many times do you want to go back and forth with that? I don't know. I just don't see a whole lot of people wanting to go through and really, have to grind out some of the more meaningless stuff. It's tedious.
Well, I mean,
trying to get up through that.
is a bitch, all right? She's a nasty bitch that we all love and love to hate. And everybody's like, EverQuest was the greatest game of all time. Don't you remember when we had to sit in one place and kill 5,000 creatures at the same time in one place for 30 hours a day? People love that. But when they go to try to do it again, they absolutely hate it. Now, are people going to get nostalgic for those level 1 skills? Like, everybody starts off the same. I think that it might be an interesting campaign discussion. Let's leave it at that. I think you're going to have the initial rushes, and I think there's the great thing about the game, as we all know, we probably said it a million times, is the variety of campaign rule sets that are actually really good.
Just leave it on this real quick.
Yep.
I think, honestly, what's going to happen is it's going to be a different kind of rush. People are really going to enjoy the level 1, everyone's on the same playing field, but then you have that character progression. But what's going to change is you're going to have the rush of what map are we on? Everyone has a fog of war. No one's going to know, right? So it's going to be a different kind of rush. May not be the same kind, but it's going to be a different kind.
I need my newbie rush. God damn it. Okay. Now, the one thing that I got heavily into the MOBA scene in the last 2 years after playing MMOs exclusively for almost a decade, and one of the things I really enjoyed was the fast-shifting meta. And you don't really see fast-shifting metas in a lot of PvE games like World of Warcraft, and there might be some of the PvP. I don't really call the PvP that happens in World of Warcraft real PvP because it's battlegrounds, it's arenas, it's not really all-encompassing the game. But in MOBAs, there's always a shift. There's always the, you have interesting comps where it's a poke comp versus a turtle comp versus a, kind of a mobility comp and stuff like that, and it constantly shifts and there's constantly answers because you're constantly reiterating these 1 hour long games across the internet. You have millions of games going on, and it's constantly being iterated on every single day when you play. That, and you get to watch some of the pros play, you watch them, and everybody tries to emulate it. Long story short, games happen, the meta changes because there's hour-long programs. Do you think because campaigns are 3 to 6 months or whatever long that we're going to see faster meta changes than we typically would in, let's say, Guild Wars 2 or Elder Scrolls? I know, Valor, we were talking about this the other night. What do you think?
Oh, man. Do I have some opinions on this? One thing that I'm going to go ahead and start off with something we didn't talk about is I think that based off of campaigns and the variety of campaigns that they're planning on having and how they're going to continue to test and shit, I think that we're going to see a lot of different types of meta just because of the style of campaigns. If they try out a campaign that has different skill caps, or if it has class restrictions, if it has time restrictions, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see a variety of different metas, and that will actually help prevent some of the flavor of the month that we see pop up in other places. So you'll see like a Dreg
meta, and then you'll see a God's Reach
very
meta,
well.
that type of thing.
I mean, and so when you get into faction versus faction, that's going to be significantly different than anything where it's going to be like a free-for-all, friendly fire, all that jazz. It's going to be different, and so if you're seeing all of these different types of campaigns, it's going to drive different metas. Will we end up eventually down the road seeing flavor of the month? This class is or this archetype is definitely better than this archetype. Yeah,
sure.
Of course. Down the road somewhere we're going to see that, and when everyone does hit their skill caps, when the game is in a mature state, that is where you're going to have to ask yourselves: is it balanced? And I don't know that we'll know that until we get there.
No, I mean,
that's beautiful.
When I was talking with Todd on the re-rolled interview that I did a couple weeks ago, they don't care about balance, at least balance in the short term. They care about balance in the long term. If something's completely OP and you can one-shot everybody because something's absolutely broken. But they talked about something that was very important, which is what kind of developed this whole meta discussion in my brain before I brought it up, was emergent emergent behavior with characters. Like, yeah, skill does this, but it accidentally kind of does this, and that's kind of awesome. Let's let them run with it and see how the players kind of revolve around that. Lakes, what do you think is the most important thing for the game to do in order to foster that kind of environment where people are having fun, the meta delivers, but it's also not like a stifling nerf and buff kind of cycle?
So it's going to be hard. First of all, you have to look at flavor of the month. There's always going to be a strong build path,
sure,
whatever you want to call it. Like, that's going to be the main thing. So what is going to be very weak relative to that? Maybe you do need to buff some things. Maybe you want to nerf some things. And you talked about it specifically. One of the big things is no one wants to go in and get 3-shot by some guy that CC'd you and then just blew you up, and you had no opportunity to play against that. That needs to be balanced. But as far as something that's a little strong, you're never going to have a balanced game. We talk about this over and over again, and perfect balance is not fun to play against in general. What I think they need to do is make sure that one class is not fantastic at everything. If they can control that, I think they'll control the overall balance of nerfs, and if you stay within that happy medium of everything having its own place.
Here's the important aspect that you have to kind of consider, that, you know, yeah, there's going to be buffs and nerf cycles. That happens with every game, because if no game without buffs or nerfs stays stagnant and people get bored and go away. People actually going to really care that much where you have all this stuff going on? Because it's going to be a wide open class system.
Oh, man. I mean, there's always going to be people that care, though.
I know, but like, are the people that are going to care going to be like this many people, or is it going to be this many people? I mean,
well, I mean, it depends on the path, right? Like, what if you spent all 6 months building a specific way, and now all of a sudden your build gets nerfed to dirt to where you can't do anything? Those people are going to care.
Oh, because Todd, you're making everything permanent, huh?
Yeah.
Old school on you there.
Or if you make a mistake, right, you're stuck with it. So maybe you didn't make a mistake. Maybe you picked the best possible path, and it was so strong that they nerfed it, and now it's not usable.
The $4 million stretch mark is going to be more customer service people to help out with all the redo the builds and stuff like that, right? That's the $4 million goal?
It's a good thing. Like, people should be allowed to make mistakes. I think we talk about this all the time. We want people to be able to make mistakes, and I think that's a great thing about this game. So I don't think that's a problem, and they shouldn't have to fix it. I think that happy medium is going to be a hard thing to accomplish. Well, I mean, with a lot of modes and balancing's tough.
Yeah, I mean, without going too far off the reservation with theory crafting on stuff that we don't even know about, because frankly there's a lot of those systems aren't in place, is you have to be able to make mistakes, and that's fine. I mean, that's a really important part about the whole risk first reward type of mentality of playing a game, but it also has to be recoverable. You can't spend 30 days doing a skill and all of a sudden you realize it's crap. I mean, you should have to know what it's going to do, and then if it turns out to be garbage 6 months down the road from now, you should be able to shift gears a little bit within your runestones or disciplines. And I think that's a perfect segue to our next topic, which is disciplines. That's why I'm an amazing host, because I can segue that way. See, that's why I'm here. That's why I get paid so much money to do this.
In the sales game, we call that just it's being a good salesman, but also a good bullshitter. So
you got a guy from Jersey. I'm the best. I'm the best. All right, here we go. Disciplines. We got to drop. This week, update number 14, I think it was, character progression. And we know a lot of this stuff. I mean, we know that you pick an archetype, and then you promote your class to kind of more specialize it in a certain way. And we could probably spend an hour going over, hey, what do you think the knight's going to turn into? What do you think this is going to turn into? And it's all, we could sit here in a giant circle jerk and get nowhere. No one's really interested in all the guesswork. But what we can't talk about is how that can change or guide player behavior while playing the game. Because I think we can kind of take our experience with a lot of these games and kind of shape a discussion around it. Says, okay, you pick a class. Then you can pick a promotion class. Very easy to do. But then you have these things called runestones. And you're getting them with loot. You're getting them as rewards. And they're tradable and all that type of thing. What do you think, off the top of your head, your first thought, what is the first type of emergent behavior, Valor, you think is going to pop up with this kind of behavior when it comes to runestones?
I think people are going to they're going to try and collect as many as possible. They've talked about campaign victories. They've talked about digging in the ground and just coming across them. They've talked about a variety of other ways that, it's just going to be fun ways to get runestones to be able to train disciplines. And I think people are going to go out there and going to try and collect as many as they possibly can because, starting out, no one really knows what's going to be good. The challenge, and this is one of those things that I've just kind of been biting my tongue waiting to say, the challenge is going to be ensuring that each skill has equal value. They don't have to be balanced. They don't each have to mean you can beat somebody in this or beat someone in that. But it needs to provide an equal value to the community, or else they just won't be used. Now, that's not every PvPer is going to want to have a particular crafting skill. Not every crafter is going to want to have a particular PvP skill. But they need to have some sort of inherent value. I think that's the one thing that is going to be a challenge and a driving factor.
Well, you take a look at every game, though, and you take not everything is going to be viable. It's just completely impossible to be able to do, because specifically different paths are going to be better than others that are going to fit specific runes. So, for example, I'll even talk about a game that was mainly PvE, because it's easy to relate to, because you're just killing pixels, essentially, that aren't controlled by anybody. But Final Fantasy XIV, those runes and what people use to kind of build their characters around, some of them were just completely useless, and some were completely, desired, whether it's crit, whether it's healing, or whatever the case might be. That kind of stuff is what makes that game special. So not everything's going to be able to be useful, but what I think they need to be able to do is I think they need to be able to have those play styles be useful in certain situations.
Well, I mean, I think that's what the developer. This is to your point. I think what the developers call horizontal progression, and you were talking about this in your last episode, which is incredibly important. Because this is what basically killed Rift off, I think, in my opinion, is you had all these collections of souls, and originally their design document was you go out there and you collect souls like runestones, and you add your classes and you mix and match them, and then all of a sudden they just gave a whole bunch to a single class. That was it. And then you had a talent tree, and everything was equal. It had the same amount of pixels going at the top. Everything was 4 or 5 wide. It was very static. It was all vertical progression. And every expansion that came out, you just get higher and higher and higher.
And horizontal is fun.
Horizontal is great because you know what? I have this one, and I trained the hell out of this guy. I've been using this one since day one. It's been training nicely in my tertiary slot. And all of a sudden, the next patch, oh guys, hey, by the way, we just developed 10 new runestones. And you know what? One of them has only 3 skills to it. It was very easy. But that one skill might come in handy when you're doing a siege, because that guy now has a giant siege cannon, and he's just the sieger. He's completely useless everywhere else, but he has that one runestone ability. That's kind of cool.
So what I really like about the disciplines is if you make the mistake in that aspect of your build, you can easily change it by just getting another one. Everything's going to be open market too. You can trade with other people that may have that specific runestone or path that you want to go. So not everything's going to be completely not obtainable. You have your passive leveling, which is going to be great, and then on top of that progression, you're also going to have the disciplines that are going to be attainable from the runestones that you can get from either the campaigns or other people. So I think that's one of the cool things about the character progression is you can test many different things out, and it's forgiving a little bit in that aspect, but they made some things permanent. So you have to build right. Essentially, in your initial, you build your character, you get your advantages, disadvantages, but you're also able to change those advantages, disadvantages later on in the game too. So that's forgiving. They do have a lot of this is permanent, but there are some forgiving factors to it, which I really enjoy.
I mean, you could go out and get a runestone, and it could be completely OP. Maybe you nerf it a little bit, but it's just a small one and a myriad of other ones, and it kind of keeps the balance a little bit easier. Just like League of Legends, they don't keep adding more updates to their pool of 60 champs. They now have 130 plus champs. They keep adding to it. It's not that it's easy, but it's easier to balance 4 or 5 skills versus a class that's 10 years old, just like WoW did with all their stuff. And Valor, I saw that you had a question here. You want to give a quick rundown on what actually runestone is, because I guess some
yeah. So there's a little bit in there, but runestones are going to be items that provide the ability to learn a particular discipline. You can only have a certain number of disciplines active at any point, and so as you find runestones, you can sell them. Who knows? They may even become what the players decide to be currency. And we don't know how certain ones might be more rare than others. There's really no other information out there. However, if you want to really get caught up to speed on runestones and everything, let me link you the update that I've got here, and there's a lot of information there.
Yeah, and it's basically there's 2 tiers of class development. You have your archetype that you pick, and that's permanent. You have your promotion class that you pick, that's permanent, and it's one choice. And then you have all these runestones that you can use to augment and train up. So if anybody here has played Eve, well, they don't have an archetype, or they don't have a promotion class, but let's say, well, actually, imagine if you couldn't train the different factions. in the different races, whatever they call them in Eve, and you kind of specialize in one direction rather than being completely horizontal. But I think with the way the runestones are, they'll easily be able to tinker here and there without completely screwing up somebody's build, because it's 1 out of 3. And yes, you can swap them out. And you can trade them, obviously, what we mentioned. And, I mean, like, here's some examples. You have the Alchemist runestone, the Werewolf runestone. I mean, you have all these crazy ones that, a lot of people from Shadowbane remember, like Ratcatcher and the Beastmaster and this Blood of the Ancients. Like, what does that actually mean? We don't know. And you can add some really cool-looking things without it really affecting anything else. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see, because not only do you have to worry about runestones, getting the core, but you can make really rare ones, and that's actually going to be like, okay, in WoW, you get like, I got Thunder Fury, I'm the most badass on the server, but now I have this really unique runestone that you can keep with you forever. That makes you very unique. Do you think they're going to do that, Lakes, at all in the game?
I think it's going to be cool. I think that's definitely something that they can do. I think one of the first things that came to mind to me was that runestones allow you to almost have that customization to be able to shift to changing metas. Like if certain play style, I'm sorry, I'm going off topic a little bit, but it was like in my mind, and I was thinking about this, like having multiple runes in my play style within the game, and I'm like, wow, this isn't working versus the people that I'm playing against, so you can consistently change this meta. Or what if this skill is something that you need for your specific group to help support and facilitate winning that campaign? Like, you can easily change that kind of stuff. I don't know how easy it's going to be. I mean, we all don't know that, but I think it's a really cool aspect of the game. It's almost like changing armor, like mid fighter, or not even mid fight, just like in between. Like, wow, I'm facing a lot of magic damage, I'm going to throw on a little bit of more magic resist type armor or something like that. It's like prepping you to where you can change in between.
You know what actually would be an interesting thing? This is something that I was talking on Twitter about with one of their art folks. This is way off topic, but what if at the end of campaigns, if your character could actually, if you lost a campaign, you could lose a limb to be replaced by some sort of bionics, and that could also become somewhat similar to like a discipline. And they could add a god, or make one of the gods more of a bionic, less atheistic. That's one of those things that I think would be cool, and it would allow players. You could end up with a more bionic character model. I'm sure this is completely unrealistic in terms of how much work it would cost.
So you want a cyborg?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you could have like a cyborg. But the deity that they'd fight for would all be cyborg, and it's not really a god. It's more of the atheistic element, and but if you want to go back to where you were, you simply start winning campaigns, and the gods can grant you regeneration for your variety of limbs. I don't know. I thought it was cool.
I love you. I love you. But I'm really happy that you are not a game developer.
Oh, man. I think it'd be fun.
Maybe you could start a thread on the official forums, and all you guys can theorycraft about something that doesn't exist yet. You can go have fun with that. All right, well, we're talking about we can collect runestones. There's another thing that we saw in an update that came out today, I think. It was about collecting relics and artifacts. And I think this is a really interesting aspect of the game. And a lot of people are kind of like, going on, what does the EK mean? What are we doing in the Eternal Kingdoms? I want it to be more. I want it to be this. I mean, let's be realistic first. The Eternal Kingdoms is basically going to be a spot where you can build houses, you can do some trading, it's where you can relax for 2 hours before you start a new campaign and you organize some stuff, but it's really not the thick of the game, and I think we all know that. But inside your Eternal Kingdom, you're going to be able to store relics and artifacts. They both do the same thing. They give your character buffs, and you get to have 3 of them, 3 of each. And hopefully I don't screw this up. Relics is something that you keep for yourself, and artifacts is what you keep for your guild. Did I get that right, Valor?
And where you put them.
Right. I mean, like, you got to build a structure for it, but I mean, you still get a kind of a small little buff for yourself.
Right. And it's really cool. Like, people, like you said, were talking about EK, and not only that, but they also released, I think it was like the end of last week, they talked about some sort of tournament campaigns, and if some developers are watching, you read my mind, that's exactly what I wanted to see. But on top of having that as an in-game, you also have these buffs that you can get for yourself and for your guild. And I think that's really cool feature, like being able to build your own buff that gives you a general radius kind of thing in your internal kingdom. So whoever's like attached to your land or close to your land has the same buff, and you can maybe have them all over the map. So maybe if you have one for crafting a specific thing, you can go to that side of the map and craft over there. So it's really unique, and I think it's going to be cool. It's just how effective are those buffs going to be? I know they don't want them to be too overpowered to where, you know, that really helps you win the next campaign, but you still want them to benefit enough to where it's a noticeable advantage.
All right, well, here's a question that came in from Vitality that when I requested some questions for the show, he kind of put on. This kind of ties right in. I'm going to direct this at you, Valor, because you're a big wig up there in Lords of the Dead, and you know, you're the big guilds. You're going to have all the good shit, and you're going to have all the artifacts. I mean, it's going to happen. You have 5,000 people playing the game. You're going to collect the good stuff. You're going to win some fights, and unless you're going up against some other of the PvP guilds out there, maybe give you a run for your money. But you're going to get them eventually, if not right away. What are the PvP implications about stacking them in a single guild, and then, you know, are you going to have a boring campaign? I mean, like, are we going to get like 5% harvesting speed, or 5% attack speed, or 1%? Is that going to be a difference, or do you think that's going to be just a little nicety?
So the things that they've talked about so far have been mostly related to skill increases. So, you know, your archery will raise 5% faster, or you know, you might have a small, you know, 1 or 2% boost to some mining stat. So, you know, yes, there will be some rewards, I think, and for, you know, competitive PvP communities such as Lords of the Dead, a number of the guilds that we interviewed in, you know, our second or third podcast, you know, a lot of these communities, they go out there and it's a play to win. You know, we want to get out there and we want to cap out everything. We want to win. And, you know, in past games, when you win, typically the server dies because, congratulations, you killed everybody and they don't want to play you anymore. But in a game like this, you know, the rewards are going to be these trophies. Effectively, it's going to be like apparently the World Cup, you know, or the Stanley Cup, or whatever variety of trophies. And so you will have these. They're going to have tournaments. They're going to have all these things. And so when it comes to these blessings, how much you can actually, you know, collect up as a guild and just stack, I really don't see happening. I think that if it turns into a problem where guilds are trying to game the system, they'll just put a hard cap on you know, what you can do.
Well, I mean, do you think they're going to be more ancillary?
They put a cap on it.
Yeah, there's 3, right?
Yeah, there's 3 caps. So like we keep on.
I thought that was just for players. I didn't know that was for guilds as well.
I assumed it was.
It's a cap. It's a cap of 3, so that keeps the dominant teams from building this snowball advantage, and that's one of the things that they don't want to happen. Is I talked about it earlier, was they don't want those relics and everything to build up an advantage to where these guys just continue to dominate, and you have the Uncle Bob, but in a different fashion.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of reading the language over again from the FAQ that was released today. It says, blessings are passive effects, and players can select based on the artifacts and relics they have access to. So I was probably incorrect when I said you can have 3 relics and 3 artifacts. I think you get to select 3 from the total pool of both guild and player stuff.
Oh, so there you go.
I think
learning something every day.
I think I just answered my own question. Maybe we can ask on Twitter if that's actually what it is. But then my next question was, now is everybody forced to join a giant guild so they get these things? And that answered my question. No, you don't have to be a guild because you could use all 3 of your personal things, and there you have it.
But you might not have access to some of them, you know, based off of, you know, community success.
What if you could trade? Can you trade them?
I don't
Why
think
not?
so.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
Why not?
You think
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that would be create a new element of their whole economy.
You can, because here you go. You can go and say, I want to swear fealty to you or whatever, and you become one of their vassals, have access to some of their kingdom artifacts and blessings, but in turn, I give you Uber material number 5, 6, and 7, and then you could be my vassal, and you have access to my 5% logging speed, which is amazing for your crafters out there.
And then you think about it, like, that's the beauty of this game, is you can trade almost anything. Services, whether you're just like a straight kill squad or you're a crafting squad or anything. Like, you could be like, hey, you do this for me, I'll do this for you. You want these buffs? cool, man. Jump on board. I'll give you a little spot in my crib.
Well, this is going to create an interesting scenario between, PvP guilds and the crafting guilds, because I know there's always a couple of guilds where they're there, they enjoy the crafting elements, they enjoy the exploration of the crafting tree, and so from what I'm seeing from Gordon, they're going to be tradable, and what that'll allow is it'll allow guilds to say, yeah, we're going to go out there, we're going to win this campaign, we're going to collect all these rewards, and then we're going to take them back, we're going to go pay our guys so that we can still have all of our equipment for the next time.
Guild, though? Here's kind of an ancillary question. Can you actually have a pure crafting guild? I mean, I don't think that works.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to leave. Like, what if you develop your crafting skills? Like, maybe you get a few resources. You're the only person with several other people that's consistently leveling up their crafting abilities. Okay. At that point, now you have those disciplines, and you have everything else geared towards crafting that other people may not do. You never leave the EK, and you do things for people. They pay you
silly,
in return.
Because Lords of the Dead are going to have multiple people running multiple accounts, have just passively training crafters on the side. I mean, like,
only if that's legal.
Do that.
Only if that's legal.
Of course that's legal, because now ArtCraft is going to have people paying for more boxes. So of course they want people to have multiple accounts.
They talked about that specifically. Is they do not want to benefit that style of play. They really want to benefit the people that are dedicated to crafting to have that advantage.
But let's talk about reality here. I mean, people are always going to game the system. I mean, pure crafter, people want to have the fantasy, yes, I'm going to build everything, and everybody's going to come to my EK, and I'm going to be this great shopkeeper and all this other stuff. That does not happen. I mean, that happens for like the first 5 days where everybody else is rushing their other skills, and you're the only crafter in town. 5 months down the road, everybody's going to have access to crafters, and you're not going to be that unique snowflake anymore. Crafters are very important, but you're not going to be able to do it by yourself.
I agree with you. I think that what's going to end up happening is it's going to be this, large communities are going to form, and this is one of the things that I think there's a lot of concern. If you hop on the official forums for Crowfall right now, there is a lot of concern about the quote-unquote Zerg. Mm-hmm. What happens when people realize, like, oh, all these people, they want to do crafting, but they really don't want to do a ton of PvP, or they like certain aspects. They're going to join a big community, and big communities are going to begin to collect, and they might collect over a few eternal kingdoms. And how are they going to manage that? Because now you have the ability to just go in and put a ton of numbers into a campaign.
Here's how they're going to manage it, and ArtCraft is going to have to do this for it to be successful, because guilds like PRX, Lords of the Dead, and all this other stuff, they're going to have enough people to do crafting people, and then there are PvP people. So it's within your large community, you have all these separate divisions, and you're going to be able to take care of yourselves. There's a lot of guilds out there that have 10, 20 people in it, maybe they're all PvPers. They need to have some kind of fashion in the game where you can align guilds together. And not just, we share, an engine forum together, and this is where we talk, but they need to have in-game tools to be able to communicate between different guilds and form alliances. So you can coordinate going into the same campaign, and you can have your guild worth of crafters, and they do their own thing, but then you have the PvPers that, with their own guild, protect those other guys. And I think that's the way it's going to work, and I think that's the way Todd kind of envisions crafters, because you have that interdependence between the two parties. And I think that happens on the smaller scale of smaller players.
I think that's the ideal world. I think that the concerns out there are loud, and we're going to have to see how they end up being answered.
All right, I wanted to talk about mounts and mobility, but I think we're going to go a little bit over on time. I want to keep the show right on moving. So, and I think you guys talked about mounts last episode. So let's not go over that.
Yeah, we did. The real quickly is simply how mounts will adjust the maps, and and how that affects PvP and strategy. So maybe we'll touch on it in another cast.
I think we need to elaborate that, because I think I want to wrap my head around, because we were talking about how mounts are summonable things, they can be destroyed, and you were talking about how Darkfall kind of balanced against that. Let's save that for another show, because I think we can really dive into that quite a bit, and there's a lot of stuff that we need to put a little bit more thought into. I would like to go lastly into some viewer questions. I sent out a quick tweet earlier for some people to email us for questions, and I ask everybody listening that's either listening tonight live or that's listening on our YouTube channel The email address is crownsandcrows@gmail.com. Very simple. Send in as many questions you want. Maybe we'll take all of them in one show. Maybe we'll save one for one show, save for another. I already went with Vitality with one of his questions. Let's just go over, because this is going to touch upon the first topic tonight. He wants to know, when you have a high turnover later in the game where new players are coming in and the old players are going, are new players significantly weaker than max skill point players? And I think we had some kind of an answer, but Lakes, why don't you take over and answer that question as far as the difference between the power curve of all the different skills?
So there's going to be an obvious advantage towards the person that has these max skills. It's obvious, right?
Sure.
You're just going to have that power curve. It's going to be inevitable, but there's certain things that they want, like first of all, the style of PvP mechanics that they plan on putting in. Yeah, a level 1 just starting fresh out versus a guy that may have max skills, maybe max CC or max damage or something. He's going to have that advantage, but the mechanic style, you can outplay somebody. They talked about maybe they want to do some dodging and some positional factor. And if you're just a really good person at video games, you have great positioning, you have a great overall vision, and you understand the game to begin with and the mechanics, you can have the possibility of being able to beat that person.
Are we going to see tacklers in this game, like Eve, where you jam their signals and their comms and slow them down, and somebody in a newbie ship with 3 hours worth of training can go in there and affect the battle with CC?
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's the beauty of their system is, you can specialize in something and be really good at it. You won't have flexibility. That is why they have a more lateral progression system as opposed to a vertical. Is you can log in. You can, pick, this is what I'm going to do. These are the disciplines I want to pick. I'm sure they'll have a starting 3 or something. And so, they will have what you can start out with. You can go in there and, you just choose you want to be an archer, and you're going to be a decent archer. Yeah, you might not be as strong, but, as long as you're going up against and putting yourself in, strategic advantages, you're going to be, a usable person, much like with Eve.
Yep.
But I think even better. I think that as long as they don't get crazy with how much vertical progression there is, it'll be fine.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the new players are going to have the ability to, compete and contribute right away. Now, Valor, we got a question in from chat, and I think it was answered either on Twitter or somewhere in the forums. I remember reading it. How will Centaurs ride a mount? Or does
I wanted to touch on this. I want to touch on this because one of the things that they're talking about is how do you handle centaurs, their natural speed and their combat speed, their mount speed, and this is something that's going to be interesting for me to see because I know that in many games the use of a mount or some sort of transport device is a tool, a weapon, if you will, for being able to move around. And so how they are able to handle that, will it be faster to be a centaur and be able to go into mount speed out of combat than it is with a regular player? Personally, I think that I would not complain if centaurs had a slight advantage in terms of getting into out of combat into mount speed as opposed to a player otherwise, because that's part of the class. They're supposed to have that kind of natural speed, and so that's one of the things that for me I think is completely reasonable. And the question itself kind of came across, it's been answered. There are elements of it that haven't, and it'll be interesting to see how they clean that up.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's probably going to change 5,000 times before we
see
it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Here's another question from, maybe both of you guys can touch on this since you guys come from large communities. This is from, I'm not going to use the guy's full name, but RatGod2000 asks, to foster community building, will Crowfall have chat, voice, billboard capabilities? And I think that has to do a lot with guild UI. Val, I'll start with you again, and then Lakes, you can talk about the strategy part of that. As kind of a guild facilitator, is it important to have that in-game stuff, or is it okay just to have the outside resources and leave it at that?
I can't tell you. Hades, who founded LOTD back in 1995, he has, only 20 years. He has been one of the biggest supporters of in-game features for guilds. It's something that has really hurt guilds in the past of not having the features that a guild needs to manage everything. And now they're trying to piece together external resources to be able to support their community. And, some communities such as, LOTD, I mean, some of the established ones, they have some of this stuff already in place. But, focus on the newer communities who don't have a lot of these resources, who don't have a lot of this experience. And what you're doing is you're going to see a lot of them fold up because they don't have the in-game support to manage their members. And when guilds start folding, that's when a game starts folding.
Sure.
And if designers don't pick up on that,
what do you think? Like, I mean, that's obviously an important thing. Do you think it's a necessity, like Valor says?
Absolutely. I think, first of all, established guilds have an advantage because they've been doing this for a while. They have their methods in place. One of the things that I was thinking about this the other day, and some of the features that they could come out with and be innovative is some guilds have problems of setting stuff up prior to, and some teams and guilds and groups don't have a way of communicating, like their own official forums or a place that to kind of call their home. What if developers developed a app that you can chat in-game that directly goes to out-of-game that you can maybe upload on your smartphone instead of giving out your cell phone number, but like what we're using, we use Skype or Slack or something, but you can communicate in-game and out-of-game within that application, whether it be your smartphone or not.
I touched this a little bit with Todd on my interview, is basically it's very important to have people full-time involved in your game, whether you're playing at home for a couple hours, you're sitting at work reading the forums or something like that, because we all do that while we're working. It's basically you need to be constantly in touch, and the more you can connect the inside to the outside while you're outside looking in or inside looking out, I think it's very important. I think it's an MMO question. It's not a Crowfall question. It's an MMO question. Almost every single MMO should have something like that. I just pulled a question out of I'm going to change gears a little bit here about combat. And it's Gonsaku, I think I don't even know if I pronounced his name right, but
close enough. We don't really care about him anyway.
You take that back, Valerie. You're on a roll of being very rude tonight.
He's a rabble raiser. That's all he is.
Whatever. He's just gonna. But he comes up with a good question here. So, what extent do you want to see equipment affect your character's abilities? For example, quick daggers versus heavy swords, light armor versus speed, etc., etc. I think it's great. Because I want to go back in the day where if you wear heavy armor, maybe you go a little bit, run a little bit slower, walk a little bit slower. I like back in the day when even in World of Warcraft, if you had daggers, you attacked faster, and everything's been normalized, blah 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 blah. Everything's boring. It doesn't matter if you have a dagger or a sword. You just want the DPS rating, and to me, I think it's silly. I think there should be advantages and disadvantages to stuff, and I think Crowfall is kind of going along those lines. Any Lakes or Valley? Did anybody disagree with me, or I bet you were all in agreement with this.
Yeah, I think overall, like, it's physics-based game. If you're wearing heavy armor, you shouldn't run like a cheetah. Like across the board, that physics is going to play a large deal into the game. It's one of the aspects, the selling points.
Let's not confuse physics engine with weight, because usually a physics engine is how models interact with each other and different movements. They
specifically talked about, like, a heavier dude is going to be able to move a smaller dude, and a smaller dude's not going to be able to do that. That directly involves gear as well. And the gear being weighed down, you're not going to be able to move or as agile as someone else. So
I thought that was all stat-based. I mean, basically not item-based, but maybe it is item-based. Maybe there is a weight factor in there that allows you to kind of push people around. I like that.
I think some of that's going to be based off of the actual archetype that you select, and I think that's kind of what Lake was getting at. Is the certain archetypes. I've been a big supporter of this, the whole time, and I'm going to keep pushing my agenda here. Is that I don't want to see +1 to strength. I don't want to see +2 to dexterity. What I want to see is I want to see specialization. I want to see, you're going to get armor piercing. You're going to get magic deflection. You're going to get something that it does not make you...
different stats.
Yeah, it's not going to be just a base, my character is better. It is, my character is going to be better this direction, or my character is going to be better that direction, and allow players to figure out the counters to it.
I agree with you to a certain extent, but when you have too many main stats, it starts getting confusing for the new player and the old player alike. I mean, I think you could spend hours on a message board theory crafting, like 1% of your stats, and there's a lot of people out there. But there's more people that really don't care about that and are just going to look up a guide, what should I go for this build, and copy that. I think where the game really should go with equipment and is making it unique. Not like +1 armor pen, not whatever. It's kind of what WildStar did in one of their middle tier betas, and they kind of got rid of it. I love procs. I love items that augment your abilities. Like you jump farther, or your slash has a wider arc to it, or your fireball is wider so it hits more people, or it burns longer. Like, usually that's all into a talent tree, and that's all great and everything else like that because we're used to that in D3 or WoW or old WoW or anything like that. But I think putting those things on gear is great because then it makes you really love that gear and protect it and make you a little bit more afraid to go out in the battlefield, but you're weaker if you don't go out in the battlefield because it augments your skills too.
Yeah, I think we may agree to disagree. I think that to have...
I hate when people say that.
Yeah, I think that to have the depth of the crafting system that they intend to have and to really allow players to choose what their character is good at, I think that, put that in the hands of the players, and yes, make the introduction to it smooth and a gradual incline.
It's tough to do.
Yeah, it's a challenging system to create.
I'm looking at it from a top down, from a design point of view of not just what I want. Because I agree with you. If I was building a game just for me and you to play, I would have 1 billion stats, and you can try a whole different type of things. But for a grander scheme, it might be a little bit more difficult. Lakes, I know you want to chime in. Like, where do you fall on this line here with 1 million stats and stuff like that?
So I'm in between. I'm gonna ride the line, and I'm rarely ever between both of you guys. I'm typically always on left field, thinking of something completely different.
Yes, you are.
But
I'm on your left, so that'd be my side.
Okay, but overall, I agree that they need to make crafting worthwhile to other people, and maybe those kinds of stats may not be worthwhile to some people, but the thing that I don't like, and I agree with Valor, is I don't like the +1 strength or something really bland or just like very passive, boring stats built into there, being like you have this percentage to parry attacks or something. Like that stuff is boring to me. I don't like that kind of customization. It's not fun, at least to me.
That's what runes are for.
Right, like that's how you could customize maybe with disciplines or intuitive skills. Passives that you plan to build up, but I really like armor that can customize your playstyle.
Yes.
Kind of feeding off of what you were saying, but not maybe that extreme. I do like on-hit procs. I like things that maybe add like an AoE to your attack. Instead of doing a single target, because you're a ranger or a mage that only does single target auto attacks, you have a customization that allows you to do AoE, where it will do a splash damage maybe on that person. Like that kind of stuff is very cool and can really add to people's playstyles.
I got 2 comments here. Imagine if, instead of stacking Berserker gear in Guild Wars 2, your gear actually augmented the 5 skills that you had. When that would have changed that game dramatically, and actually would have made it more like Guild Wars 1 rather than the implementation that was in there. Maybe it would have lived a little bit longer in some of the more hardcore PvPers. Here's a topic that I want to table. Let's table this discussion because I think there's a greater topic here that I kind of want to talk about with items, item decay, item loss. And this is brought up on the Rerolled forum, and God help me, but I can't remember who brought it up. But it was basically, in Ultima Online, everybody went after the best gear, the best swords, the best armor, everything, but they banked everything, and you're too scared to ever use it because they're going to lose it. And here's a discussion for the next show. Let's do this for the next show. Maybe we can get some people commenting on email, crownsandcrows@gmail.com. Send in your thoughts on this. Maybe we'll discuss a little bit more with the community. Do you think the fact that campaigns are ending, you can't bring all your gear out, that's going to force people to craft the really awesome gear and actually use it in PvP? Or are they still going to be too scared to actually use it and only wear it when they're sure to win? So I think that's a good discussion point. Let's table it for the next episode because I really want to tackle it right now. Frustration! But let's table that. Do we have any more questions? Because I think we're right about reaching up to the finish mark here. Do we collect
pretty close? Pretty close.
All right, we'll save. I know we got some other questions from.
We could always talk about who do they think's going to win March Madness? I mean, is it Kentucky this year? I mean,
undefeated.
Undefeated all the way.
But okay, I know. John sent in a couple questions. We'll get to you next time because he also brings up building fortifications, building things, and I think that's a great topic for a whole show as far as how do you build fortifications, where can we build them, how are they going to actually work inside of a game. We'll dedicate a whole topic to that, so we'll hit that up next episode. All right, well let's wrap it up. Let's hit our some social media out. Shout outs. You can follow me on JDODGE, on Twitter. Valor and Lakes, why don't you shout out your Twitter account so everybody knows where to go?
Yeah, if you guys haven't, Born in Valor, follow me on Twitter. And,
spams you all day long.
Yeah, oh man, it's just a constant. I find all the best stuff online.
And then you can follow me at LakeZ_. It's Twitter. That's mainly where I hang out, so I'm with Valor. I like to spam things. I've been real busy lately, so haven't been as active, so I apologize.
All right, and then also you can find our YouTube channel, just Crowns and Crows. There it is. Big Pimpin' over there, Lords of the Dead, 20 years. We'll give you a shout-out for you there, Valor. You'll get your points with your GM that's in the crowd.
LOTD.org. All right, no, I don't have to get demoted.
All right, no demotions for you.
Benched, boy.
All right, that was a great show, guys. Thanks for watching. Lakes, Valor, I'll see you next week.
Take care, guys.